In this explainer, we're going to break down a really powerful protest speech. It takes this huge, decades-long struggle and boils it down to one simple idea. It all kicks off with a single spark. And believe it or not, a biscuit wrapper. So the speaker kicks things off with this really potent image. He says society is like a cart full of garbage, just piled high with injustice. And his point is, right, when things are that flammable, you don't need some huge firestorm to set it off. Nope, just one single matchstick. That's all it takes to change everything. And that spark he's talking about, it's a demand for justice for a very specific event, the Semmani massacre in Sri Lanka. Now, this was part of that long, incredibly violent conflict between the majority Sinhalese and the minority Tamil populations. What's interesting is that the speech itself was actually given by the leader of a Tamil nationalist party, but in India. And his whole goal is to link this horrible event from the past to a political movement happening today. So let's dig in and unpack this historical garbage that he says is fueling the fire. All right, so first up, let's look at the foundation of his whole argument. The history of injustice that he's presenting as the fuel for this fire. You see, from the speaker's point of view, this isn't just about one isolated incident. No, it's a whole chain of oppression. He draws a direct line, starting from when Tamils were marginalized after independence, leading straight to that 1996 murder, which is what ultimately led to the discovery of the Semmani graves. And in his narrative, it all comes to a head in 2009, when thousands of Tamils just disappeared at the end of the Civil War. Okay, so the speaker really zeroes in on this one key piece of evidence, the mass graves at Semmani. He claims there were over 600 skeletons found there. And for him, these aren't just bones, they're silent witnesses, and they're demanding to be heard. Then, in his speech, he talks about how the state reacted when these graves were found. According to him, the official story was that these were just ancient burial sites, basically dismissing any connection to the conflict that was happening right then. And this is where his argument gets really sharp. He points to one tiny, seemingly insignificant detail, a plastic wrapper from a modern biscuit, one sold locally, and he uses that to completely tear apart the official story. He just asks, how on earth could a 600-year-old grave have a piece of modern trash in it? It's his big gotcha moment. For him, it's the smoking gun, the proof of a massive cover-up. So, okay, if there was a cover-up, who was behind it? This is where the speaker broadens his argument. He starts to lay out this huge, tangled web of betrayal that he believes is the reason there's still no justice today. And the list of accused parties is, well, it's pretty huge. The speaker doesn't just point the finger at the Sri Lankan state. He also calls out the Indian government, saying they picked big business over human rights. He even accuses Tamil politicians right there in India of just trying to protect their own careers. And then there's the international community, who he says basically just sat on their hands, waiting for India to give them the okay to act. An okay that he says never came. He makes a really stark comparison when it comes to India's foreign policy. He argues that back under Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, India actually stood with the oppressed. But he says that later governments completely flipped the script and started siding with the very state he calls the oppressor. And this next quote from his speech really sums up his whole geopolitical argument. He says that, essentially, India held the key to the future of the Tamil people. But instead of using that key to unlock liberation, he argues they locked the door and just threw the key away. So after laying out this whole history of injustice and betrayal, the speaker makes a big pivot. He stops diagnosing the problem and starts proposing his solution. And it's a solution that involves really redefining what politics is all about. He hones in on one really critical word, Elam. And he argues, look, we have to stop defining this as a problem that needs to be solved. For him, in his framing, it's about liberation. It's the fundamental right of a people to go after their own nation. And he sets up his movement as a total rejection of the way politics is usually done. He kind of scoffs at his opponents for offering freebies like mixers and grinders, saying that that just treats people like a herd of consumers. For him, this isn't some game to win Elam votes. It's about demanding a fundamental right to dignity and self-determination. So all of this leads to his final point. If the real goal is liberation and not just protest, what's the one tool you need to actually make it happen?
And to drive this home, he brings in a really powerful quote that he attributes to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was a key architect of India's constitution. The message is crystal clear. Feeling sad or angry isn't a strategy. The only key that can unlock a different future is political power. Plain and simple.
And that leads him to lay out a very practical 3-step plan. This is his path forward, and it goes way beyond just protesting. Step 1, wake people up. Make them conscious of this history. Step 2, take that awareness and turn it into actual votes, into electoral power. And finally, step 3, use that official power to go out and demand justice on the world stage. And he's not just talking theory here. He points to this number as proof that his idea is working. In a recent election, his party got 8.22% of the vote. And he doesn't see that as a loss, not at all. He presents it as a major foothold, as real evidence that his message is connecting with people, and that this path to power isn't just a dream. And so this is where the speaker's whole argument comes full circle. He insists that the only real answer to skeletons in a mass grave is getting a seat at the table of power. We've just followed his entire case, all the way from the spark of that one biscuit wrapper to this grand pursuit of a nation. And it leaves us with his central, really provocative question. Is he right? Is political power truly the only key that can fix historical injustice?